Got that down? Yep. All right, we are here today with some 40k Warhammer, more lore. And the lore is pretty deep in this universe. I mean, I've seen some cuckoo lore before, but 40k really likes to push the boundaries on dark fantasy. But more or less, it's no different from a Souls series. Souls are dark, but this is much darker. All hope just destroyed, 24/7.
Another millennium, another catastrophic invasion of Imperial space. In the first year of M39, Abaddon the Despoiler visited new darkness on the empire he had once helped create.
Boy, Abaddon just... I'll give him this. He doesn't give up, despite the numerous amount of failures. But apparently, Nurgle must really like him.
This time, however, he would not be alone in his incursion. This time he would be seconded, some would say led, by arguably the greatest military mind of the Chaos Forces. From the depths of the Eye of Terror, a million formless mouths screamed in unholy praise. The skies above Cadia darkened. All across Segmentum Obscurus, unprecedented waves of mutant births were recorded, as countless Psykers inexplicably took their own lives. The 10th Black Crusade had come, and this time, a son of the Emperor would take to the field. For the first time since the Horus Heresy, Primarch Perturabo would lead his Iron Fourth across the stars. The 4th Legion, known as the Iron Warriors, had once been the Emperor's finest siege specialists. No bastion, besides the Imperial Palace itself, had resisted
and then they went
their
to
merciless
chaos.
brand of grinding
That's
warfare.
wonderful.
No other legion, save perhaps Mortarian's 14th, could match the Iron Warriors' capacity for sacrifice and suffering. Unlike most of his traitor brothers, Perturabo had managed to retain control of his legion.
It's weird to me how the Iron Warriors so easily fell to chaos more than any other group. It was almost like, we've been fighting it for so long. You know what? Let's just join it.
Throughout the horrors of the Horus Heresy, and even beyond, the Iron Warriors were thus spared the chaotic excesses that saw so many of their comrades' legions implode. They had remained a largely unified and cohesive force, a mighty legion rather than a petty warband. Through their Primarch's ruthless disciplinary actions, they had retained the rarest thing to find beyond the immaterial veil: order and discipline. Yet
Among
despite
chaos?
their formidable strength, they had played little to no role in the power plays of the Eye of Terror. Mighty Perturabo, once Horus's spearhead against the Loyalist forces, had grown disillusioned by the many betrayals and slights he had suffered from his traitorous brothers. He had betrayed his oaths to the Emperor because he felt unappreciated and exploited, only to discover that his fallen brothers also saw him as an expendable pawn. Thus, he abandoned the Great Heresy and sequestered himself in his fortress world of Medrengard, nurturing old wounds and letting his millennia of bitterness consume him. Few men, loyalists or traitors,
Sounds like he's
had
just
seen him
very
since.
angry.
Rumors circulated that the fallen Primarch had been elevated to the status of a mighty demon prince, like Fulgrim, Lorgar, or Angron. This came as a surprise to many, for Perturabo's disdain of chaotic corruption was well known. One thing was for certain: at the dawn of the 39th millennium, one of the Emperor's most lethal fallen sons would raise his fist against his father's realm once again. It is not known who made the first overtures between Abaddon and Perturabo. Some Imperial historians argue that stepping foot uninvited on Medrengard would be a lethal mistake, even for the War Master of Chaos. Others, however, contend that a Primarch...
Personally, Abaddon just fails at everything he does. His successes are usually because of insane luck.
as proud and bitter as Perturabo, would never abase himself by soliciting the help of a mere Astartes. Regardless of who made the first move, the Chaos leaders met, and against all odds, their discussions bore fruit. Abaddon, ever the diplomat by Chaos standards, knew how to find the chink in his uncle's mighty armor. The War Master had been Horus's right-hand man throughout the heresy, and had seen what tricks his father had used to ply the otherwise unbendable Lord of Iron. Abaddon thus promised the one thing Perturabo could not resist: vengeance over unsettled scores and slights. It was no secret that Perturabo loathed his brother Rogel Dawn, and his Imperial fists more than any other in the galaxy. Yet that certainly did not mean the Primarch did not have room in his heart for more hatred. Among the countless targets of Perturabo's all-consuming bitterness, Abaddon centered on a common foe, the sons of the fallen Primarch Ferrus Manus, the Iron Hands. What scores Perturabo had to settle with the 10th Legion had been lost to time. No historiator or savant has been able to uncover the events that earned the Iron Hands the ire of the 4th Legion. Not even the Iron Hands librarians and chaplains have found a credible report of events that might have led to the 10th Black Crusade. Yet, with a Primarch as irascible
and yet somehow it happened.
Petulant as Perturabo, it would be pointless even to attempt to find a rational answer. Despite his undeniable military brilliance, Perturabo had always had a volatile and petty temperament. As for Abaddon himself, it is more than likely he thought the Iron Hands a credible threat to his long war. The world of Medusa, which housed the chapter's fortress monastery, was a mighty bastion. He would need to study its defenses and probe its weaknesses if his long-laid plans were to have any hope of success. The War Master thus offered a fair and balanced bargain, aid in exchange for passage. Abaddon had seen how effective his 7th and 8th Black Crusades had been. On both occasions, the Despoiler had managed to...
I mean, Crusades aren't really effective if you have to keep doing them over and over.
...to circumvent the fortress world of Cadia and strike the soft underbelly of the Imperium with lethal success. The Loyalists, however, had gotten wise to his tactics. Countermeasures were surely in place, and the holy orders of the Inquisition would not allow him to repeat his successful infiltrations. Abaddon needed a brilliant mind to get him to his target unopposed and unobstructed. In exchange for military assistance, Perturabo agreed to open an ancient warp route out of the Eye of Terror and carry the Black Legion across the stars and beyond the bulwark of Cadia. Yet, unlike the 7th and 8th Black Crusades, the Primarch would not use sorcery to breach the Imperial defenses. Ever a man of science and reason, Perturabo would use his skills as a craftsman and engineer to solve the problem as his hated father had before him. It had always been his greatest, most unrequited desire to build rather than destroy. The Emperor, however, had seen fit to make his brother Dawn the great architect of the Imperium, while he was relegated to be the great annihilator. How fitting, then, for him to use the skills his father had undervalued to strike at the Imperium. The Lord of Iron thus shackled together the tortured machine spirits of countless enslaved Mechanicus cogitators. After months of unrelenting effort, the Primarch finally managed to break through the esoteric wards and numerical defenses erected by the superstitious tech priests. Going further than any adept of Mars had ever dared, he tapped into the near-limitless potential that human archaeotech had to offer. A glimpse from the near-mythical dark age of technology. The mangled machine spirits, driven insane from Perturabo's desecration, toiled tirelessly.
Machine spirits?
Through their combined
Sure they weren't just organic at one point?
own inputs and knowledge, they succeeded in doing the impossible, calculating a stable and safe route through the impossibility of the Sea of Souls. Buoyed by Perturabo's dark science, the Black Legion and the Iron Warriors' fleets were carried across the veils of the Immaterium, past the defenses of Cadia, and deep into the Helican subsector. Imperial alarms were immediately sounded across the stars, all the way to the Imperial Palace of Terror.
That kind of technology,
that had taken
man.
centuries to reach the High Lords of Terror were put on pause and reshuffled into the limitless backlog. For the third time since the 37th millennium, Abaddon the Despoiler had bypassed the Cadian Gate. Finding themselves once again outmaneuvered, the notoriously sluggish Imperium struggled to muster a response. It was the great irony of the Emperor's mighty realm to have the greatest armies in the galaxy at their disposal while being unable to concentrate them or mobilize them in time. As ever, first response teams of Adeptus Astartes rushed to delay the War Master until the hammer of the Emperor could arrive en masse, yet they were too few to make a noticeable difference. Abaddon immediately employed the same strategies that had proven so effective countless times before. His captains and chieftains were given orders to disperse with their warbands and strike at targets of opportunity across the sector. Their goal was straightforward: cause as much damage as possible, both material and psychological, wherever they saw fit. These harassments would force any Imperial reinforcements to split their focus and fight on multiple fronts. They also wreaked havoc on Imperial logistics, food lines, and communications, rendering any coordinated Loyalist response even more difficult to organize. Lastly, the War Master tasked a sizable section of his fleet to strike against Thracian Primaris, the capital world of Helica. Losing this vital node of imperial authority would plunge the subsector into an unrecoverable spiral of mayhem and chaos. The loss of centralized command in this region of space would see billions starve, revolt, or simply be cut off from any and all form of communication with the wider Imperium.
Iron.
Losing Thracian Primaris was simply not something the Emperor's faithful defenders could allow. With any luck, the Loyalists would thus be tricked into believing Abaddon himself was leading the detachment bound for the capital world. Meanwhile, the War Master and the Lord of Iron made for their real target, the world of Medusa, home of the Iron Hands chapter. Medusa was a feral world located near the Eye of Terror, on the outer reaches of Segmentum Obscurus. Its
Iron Warrens
landscape
and
was
Iron
defined
Hands.
by
How dare you
ceaseless
call yourself
geological
Iron?
activity. Vast mountain chains rose and fell within
And yet
generations,
iron's not even that
shaped
hard
by
of a
constant
metal compared to
tectonic
others.
Volcanoes, geysers, and seismic disturbances made permanent settlement nearly impossible. The planet's climate was cold and severe, its skies thick with volcanic ash and cloud cover. Sunlight rarely pierced the gloom, casting the world in perpetual twilight. Glaciers advanced and retreated across the terrain, carving new valleys and burying old landmarks. Despite these hardships, some human tribes endured. Nomadic and resourceful, they adapted to the shifting terrain and harsh conditions, forming a culture that prized resilience and strength. It was from these people that the Iron Hands Space Marine chapter recruited its neophytes, seeing in them the same hardiness and discipline demanded by the world itself. Though unforgiving, Medusa played a central role in shaping the Iron Hands' character, austere, relentless,
Who's
and
the Primarch
unyielding
of the
in
Iron
face of
Hands?
adversity.
Or they even have
Aboard
a
his
Primarch?
mighty flagship, once captained by Horus Lupercal himself, Abaddon watched as Perturabo led the assault against the Medusan system. The combined strength of the Iron Warriors and the Black Legion descended on the many outer bastions and fortifications of the Iron Hands. For the War Master, this was a
Again, I don't understand why they're not using aerial bombardment. I don't understand. They have the capacity to just drop bombs from space, but they don't. They just drop in more meat shields to get mowed down. I feel like 40k is like Russia. That's what it feels like. Keep throwing numbers at it. Something will give.
rare occurrence to watch and learn the art of war from a being even more exalted than he. True to form, Primarch Perturabo waged a war of attrition across the moons and planets of the Medusan system. Like a wrestler slowly working his way to a dominant position, the Lord of Iron slowly bent and battered his way to Medusa itself. This was a style of warfare that greatly benefited the Iron Warriors. The foremost siege experts of the Legiones Astartes, they had the means and the numbers to carry out such a costly campaign. The Iron Hands, however, did not. Reduced to a chapter of 1,000 Astartes after the heresy, they could not afford to fight in protracted sieges against 2 heretic legions. To make matters worse, the bulk of their chapter was scattered across the stars, pursuing campaigns in the name of the Imperium. It would take weeks for reinforcements to reach them. Their situation was grim, and the total annihilation of the Medusan system looked more than likely. Yet both the Lord of Iron and the War Master would soon come to learn that the scions of Ferrus Manus did not give up so easily. Even by Space Marine standards, the Iron Hands were notoriously implacable. While they were never as popular in Imperial legends and propaganda as the Noble Blood Angels or the vaunted Imperial Fists, no loyalist founding chapter carried as much hatred for the traitors as they did. Motivated by the tragic death of their beloved Genefather, the Iron Hands expunged all human weakness from their hearts and flesh. True to their own interpretation of Ferrus Manus' teachings, they replaced their weak human tissue with the cold certainty of steel. Now they were bedecked in cybernetic enhancements, and closer to emotionless automata than human beings. Thus they would meet Perturabo's Iron Warriors and grind them down with the methodical precision of the blessed machine. The Iron Council of Medusa decreed a state of total war. The ancient world-ending arsenal of their storied lineage would be brought to bear against the foe. No stone would be left unturned, no weapon left dormant. Ferocious war engines that had fought upon the blighted soils of Isfahan roared to life once more. Massive dreadnoughts, marred by the scars of countless battles, heaved their metal frames forward. In the deepest recesses of their fortress monastery, Iron chaplains performed the sacred rites to awaken long-forgotten weapons and armor. These holy armaments, once wielded or crafted by the great Gorgon himself, were dragged from stasis.
You gotta be honest, dreadnoughts are awesome. Space Marines 2 made them so cool. Take me to the traitors. But, Damon, I cast you down. And then Titus's response, Holy Terra.
Their slumbering circuits hummed to life in anticipation of the impending battle. Their arcane mechanisms and lethal capabilities would serve the chapter once again, offering them the edge they so desperately needed. The walls of Medusa were reinforced by the Iron Hand's auxiliary forces. Chapter serfs were seconded to the front lines, alongside legions of battle servitors, living weapons in their own right. The servitors were mind-shackled to the will of the chapter. They would toil and fight without rest, maintaining the fortifications that dotted the system. Across every planet, every moon, and every orbital station, the Iron Hands evened the playing field with the implacable efficiency of a war machine that cared not for mercy or defeat. Each defensive line was strengthened, and each weapon system was primed and ready to deliver its deadly payload. Now, with their defenses bolstered and their forces gathered, the Iron Hands met the traitor legions upon every front. No part of their system was left untouched. Every inch of Medusa's fractured worlds became a battleground, a testament to their tenacity. They had faced extinction before, long ago, and had survived the weight of the heresy. And now, with their chapter's future hanging in the balance, they would face their final trial. If this were to be their end, it would not come without a fight. It would not come in obscurity or dishonor. The Iron Hands would make their last stand worthy of remembrance, an echo of their indomitable will that would reverberate across the galaxy, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Perturabo began his campaign with systematic precision, targeting the outer worlds of the system with cold mathematical cruelty. The Primarch struck like a hammer, in slow, measured swings. Orbital bombardments pulverized mountain ranges and shield domes, while siege engines advanced behind walls of smoke and debris. Planet by planet, bastion by bastion, loyalist defenses were tested and then broken. The defenders held as long as they could, often forced into brutal last stands within the craters of their own strongholds. These were not glorious deaths, but necessary ones. There was no retreat, only resistance, calculated in hours, not victories. The Iron Hands fought with controlled fury, executing tactical withdrawals only when every delaying measure had been exhausted. In many cases, they remained until structural collapse or orbital fire made further resistance impossible. Melter bombs were set to deny ground, and plasma cores were overloaded to deny capture. In this way, the outer system was sacrificed not out of weakness, but out of strategic necessity. For every hour gained, another company arrived from the void. For every position lost, another was fortified behind it. Though heavily outnumbered and
sounds like they were just playing
the Iron Hands
like I said, a war of attrition,
crucial time.
waiting
Their
for
delaying
reinforcements.
actions allowed supporting companies to regroup and reinforce key positions, ultimately preventing the total collapse of the system's inner defense ring. Dozens of strike cruisers, returning at maximum burn from distant campaigns, began to reassemble in high orbit over Medusa. What had begun as a retreat turned into a defensive realignment. The price, however, was steep. The many moons and planets of the Medusan system were rendered lifeless by orbital saturation. The mighty forges of the Iron Hands lay buried under tectonic upheaval. Scores of the chapter's tech marines, Iron Fathers, and Battle Brothers were lost. The chapter endured, but Perturabo had his revenge. Imperial reinforcements from the Astra Militara and several Astartes chapters eventually arrived, translating into the system and making it ready for battle. Wave after wave of Imperial warships emerged from the warp, disgorging troops, armor, and materiel into the embattled system. Unlike the betrayal and abandonment suffered at Isstvan V, this time the Iron Hands were not left to bleed alone. The dark memory of the drop site massacre had lingered in the chapter's collective memory like a thorn, but now, at last, the wider Imperium stood beside them. The arrival of these reinforcements shifted the balance. What had seemed an inevitable collapse became a grinding stalemate. Abaddon, ever the strategist, recognized the danger of overextending his forces. Perturabo too would not squander his warriors in a campaign that had lost its momentum. The siege was lifted, and one by one the fleets of the Iron Warriors and Black Legion withdrew, disappearing into the turbulent currents of the warp.
So that was the 10th Crusade? Just a invasion of the Medusa system? They used a distraction to lure forces away, and then the real target was the Medusa system. But was their only goal just to instill chaos? Just seems kind of waste of time. I guess that's the nature of chaos.
Their holds full of spoils and trophies of war. Before retreating, however, the traitor forces had achieved more than simple devastation. They had mapped the defense grids of Medusa, studied the cadence of Iron Hand's deployment, and tested the limits of their endurance. Though the 10th Black Crusade had failed to annihilate the Iron Hands, Abaddon's reconnaissance by fire had knocked the proud chapter out of the long war for decades to come. In their withdrawal, they carried with them data and patterns, analysis and intent, the first strokes in a far larger campaign yet to come. Medusa had survived, but it had been seen, and the gaze of the eye would not forget. More videos on Abaddon and the Black Crusades are on the way. In the meantime, we're planning to cover the battles of many other fantasy, sci-fi, and space opera universes.
So the Iron Warriors they're allied with Chaos against the Imperium, but they don't deal with Chaos's possession and mutations. They just stay as they are while allying with Chaos. Makes me wonder what side of Chaos they pick, like which Chaos god was Slanesh, Nurgle, the War Dude of Destruction? I don't know. I'm curious because I find it strange that he's one of the last surviving Primarchs. He's on the side of Chaos, but he's blatantly kept to himself on his world. And I'm surprised he's not a prime target for like Gilliman to launch a campaign to take him out before he would become a problem.
So make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see it. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord, and much more. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we will catch you on the next one.
Hey there everyone, if you enjoy this content, like and subscribe, and comment down below. Thanks again!